So because they're not in the same social setting as their friends. Normally they'll be at school and they can chat with their friends and so, but social media for a lot of teenagers in particular today is their main way of communicating with others. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just to make them aware that you do have a lot of people, cyber predators who are out there. So it's all finding a balance where you might see your child who's using their phone more, texting more, and things like that. They're not trying to ignore, but that's the language that they speak right now. And it's even more so prevalent because of the situation that we all find ourselves in.
Okay, well, all this sounds like a lot of hard work for parents and, primary carers. So, how can we take care of ourselves? Because if we're not calm, children aren't going to be calm. So the first thing is, if we just sort of like look at the circle of control, right? That's, here, you can only control the things you do or say and your reaction to what is happening around you. So, we get all bombarded with all this news, but there's a lot of it that we just can't cope with. So what can we do? First of all, let's understand that there's some things that we're concerned about, but we cannot do anything about. Then there's some things that we might be able to influence. But the real circle of control is those things that we directly can do. And so what sort of things could those be for taking care of ourselves, right? The first thing is maybe, like on the next slide says, what is our self-care? We have to separate emotions from facts. We're worried, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, we are still healthy. Even if someone close to us who is, and this would be really sad, even if someone close to us dies, we are still here. And so it is our duty to say, okay, let me live and let me be calm about what is happening. I recognize that there's some horrible things happening, but those are out of my control. So what do we do to balance the demands on us? We can't do everything. So let's take time out. You can even hide from your kids. Sometimes, people go into the loo and sit there with a book, I know some people maybe have a glass of wine or something every now and again, just to relax, get a haircut or cut your own hair. There's so many things that you can do, but the important thing is to focus on the positives in your life, reconnect with these children, and stay grounded. Meditation, practicing mindfulness, breathing techniques, and doing this with your kids actually can help a lot, because you can build it into the schedules that you bring up. I think that we've covered just about everything. And now we want to give you the chance to ask your questions and answer what you have for us.
I think we have some questions in the chat.
Yes, we do. So one of the questions that I've got here is from a teacher who's saying, how can we make the parents of our pupils excited by this new development? Bimpe, what's your take on that question? How can we make parents become excited by this new development?
I think one of the primary things we can do is to adjust our perspective. So I think perspective is always going to be the first thing that has to change in order to deal with this situation. To get you excited, how about we just look at this as a way of discovering more about each other? There are this is an opportunity for you to reconnect, a chance for you to really get to know your son or daughter, and for your children to really know how you operate and to know more things about you. Usually we're caught up in the busyness of life where we're going to work and, everyone has some schedule or the other to do. You have an after-school curriculum or something like that. And because we're so engrossed in our different pockets of functions in life, we actually lose that connection that we have with our family. So it's an opportunity for us to kind of discover something new about each other. So rather than looking at it as though we're stuck with each other, how about we just take a look at it and say, well, let's learn something new about each other. And I'm learning more about my own children, that someone really likes to do a lot of exercise at different times of the day, and another one has incorporated dancing really as a spontaneous thing to do in the house because it's lifting. We have discussions
Right.
once a week, those kinds of things. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a time to discover.
Right. And
Yeah,
for younger children especially, who, it's a time to really relish, taking part in their growth. Because a lot of
yes.
us, once the children are off to nursery, you miss a lot of stepping stones. So I think this is a way of really discovering not just your children, but of also cherishing them and seeing things through their eyes. Because
Mm-hmm.
remember all the why this, why that, all those years we miss
Yes.
those because we bundle them off to school, and then that's why they start to think their teachers know everything, because now they're asking their teachers all those why questions, right?
Yeah.
So I hope
Doesn't.
that answers that question from
Yes.
that we had about how do we make the parents excited.
Mm-hmm.
It's about balancing the fact that they have to become more involved,
Mm-hmm.
but there is an upside to it. They're going to get to know their children more, and so on and so forth. Now, somebody else has asked now, do we foresee any new issues that might arise once we get back to normal degrees of freedom? Now, that is the $100 million question, because really, do we know when we're going to go to normal degrees of freedom? We have no idea. So all I can say is that it's an evolving situation. So when we say, do we foresee any new issues? I guess, yes, we do. There is, in a child's lifespan, I mean, just 3-4 weeks is a really long time. So we're going to go back to this so-called normal degrees of freedom, but we really don't know what's going to happen next. Are we going to be expected to still maintain social distancing? Because from what I understand, COVID has no cure, and people are still going to be wary. Maybe we're going to go around in masks. We have no idea. When that child runs through the school gates, is he going to be able to hug his teacher? Is that going to be allowed? Or, are we all going to have to go around in, Hamzat suits? So these are real issues that we have to think about. And as I said before, it takes 3 weeks to form a habit. So if a child has suddenly become desocialized because they're at home and they're in their own heads and they become much more introverted, I'm not sure that it won't have some impact within the school walls, because those children might think, well, how long is this going to last? So I don't know whether you have a view on that, Pingpe.
Well, one thing I do know certainly is that things are definitely not going to be normal when we get back. It has shifted. Whatever we thought was normal is no longer is no longer true. Definitely, there are going to be new rules that will arise because, as you said, COVID does not have a cure. We don't know who has. People can be asymptomatic. We don't know what the degrees of freedom will be, but we know that we have to be extra cautious moving forward. And
I mean, just to interrupt you there, you're going to go back to school because you teach.
Yes.
So what sort of things do you think is going to happen?
Well,
when you go back, I mean, is that discussion underway about how you're going to
definitely
deal with the post lockdown
definitely
era?
the discussion is underway, because this situation has exposed vulnerabilities in every single industry, and particularly in schools. I think what has been on the table before has now been brought to fore, where school is not going to be 5 days a week any longer. There's that discussion right now, whether we're going to just have 2 days of face-to-face time and the rest of the time we're going to be online, because we want to minimize the the amount of interaction that we have in the school building, there's so many different scenarios that are being offered right now. A lot of meetings that we used to have in close quarters are going to be held virtually. So the school dynamics are going to change because school as we know it has changed, and it's changed rapidly, and it continues to evolve.
Well, from what you're saying, if they're going to be reducing the number, or there's a possibility that the number of days of actually walking into a physical building might change, then, that also brings up other problems of, organizations and so on and so forth, especially schools, because then, they might have to look at how do you maximize the amount of traffic that actually goes through the school buildings, because the buildings are there. Oh, well, it wasn't in this forum that we're going to talk about, the organizational aspects of this. But I've got another question here saying, could I suggest a schedule? Each household has its own ways of functioning, but I would suggest that at the beginning, you actually say, you have to rise at this time. I suppose you could do it as if, your home was now a boarding house. So you have a rising time, you have a time for assembly, so the child gets up, goes and has their bath or whatever, gets dressed, comes to assembly, which is, everybody reporting, we're all well. And then, you all have breakfast together or whatever, you have your coffee. And then, you say, okay, you have your breakfast now and snack is at such and such a time. You set up the computer, you go to your computer, you have your half-hour lesson. But you, parent, you also have to form your own boundaries and say, okay, this is my designated space. You cannot come in here. While you are on your lesson between, 11 and 11:30, I'm going to be doing something as well. If you ever see me holding the phone and speaking into the phone, do not come and disturb me, because whatever I'm doing is quite important. And you are here now, so you can wait the 5 or 10 minutes, right? And we all know what it is when people want to interrupt your phone calls. The person on the other end thinks, oh, my being on the phone is obviously not important. And that can lead to a whole set of conflicts. So I think it's important to have those boundaries set. Don't come into my designated space between when and when. Do not interrupt if I'm on the phone. When it's snack time, we have our snacks and lunch and dinner, and these are your chores. These are the things that you have to do. So it's not just about your online learning. This is the time for exercise. You can't play loud music while I'm on the phone. So we have to negotiate. A lot of this is about negotiation, actually, so that you draw up these schedules in a negotiated space. The key thing also is that for younger children who can't read, it's an opportunity to teach them how to tell the time, because you can stick pictures of what the schedule is on some kind of chart and motivate them by giving them stars, rather like what the teachers do at school. So I hope that's been helpful. Bimpe, did you want something to add to that?
I think you just mentioned it. What I was going to say was that with the younger children, to have pictures, something for them to do, and to you can have older siblings like helping with the younger siblings, with the younger ones at home. But mainly for the younger ones, you really have to make sure that it's interactive, and I've seen some videos and parents where they think it's humorous to tell the child to, somebody just had a child counting grains of rice. And obviously it was just to keep the child, or that little child occupied or so, because, they were a little tired or something. But they need that interaction with an adult or with someone else, because they're still building their foundation for literacy. So it's very important to create meaningful learning opportunities for the younger ones.